The naturalist school of moral philosophy argues that non-human beings can be moral agents. The humanist schools of moral philosophy argue that only humans are moral agents. I'm going to discuss two of the humanist schools, libertarianism and utilitarianism, but I'm going to start with libertarianism. Libertarianism is all about the rights and liberties of individuals, and it is all about process. It is not so much about what are the results, but it is about how you got there. The father of libertarianism is John Locke, who argued that original property is just if and only if it is acquired through labor. That is, if I go into the forest and I chop down the trees and I make this into a valuable agricultural land, then because it's done through my labor, that piece of land is mine. And Locke argued this in response to James II and VII's attempt to establish an absolute monarchy in the United or in England and Scotland at the time. Now, that may be a right thing to argue, that may be a proper position to hold, but it's also very impractical, that you can only show that you own something if you have built it yourself, if you have made it yourself. That is just not how modern, or even at his time, how society works. So Robert Nozick added to Locke's principle of original property that property is also just if it is obtained through free consent. So if I made something and you made something and we voluntarily exchange that, then it's still right and proper, provided that the exchange is voluntary. And that is all there is to libertarianism. That is, if you got things either through your own labor or through free exchange, then that's fine. So there's absolutely no concept of is the final allocation of resources correct? No, if you got there in the right way, then that is fine. Which immediately implies that there is no role for distributional policy. If the final allocation is that some people are very rich and some people are very poor, provided that they got there through a proper process, then that is fine. So a government cannot tax the rich to support the poor, and you see that in this picture here. A strict libertarian would argue that taxation is theft, because essentially it's not a voluntary transfer. You are free to give money to the government, but the government is not free to take money from you. It is not to say that libertarianists have no concept of government whatsoever. Government clearly has a role to counter unjust holdings. Theft would be one thing that libertarians are against. Libertarians arguably also would see a government role in going against externalities. And an externality is essentially there's a transaction between two people, and that hurts a third one. That is not free consent, right? Or another example, if I'm smoking and in the process of me smoking I damage your lungs, that is not free consent, and therefore a government would be allowed to step in according to libertarian. Thirdly, a government may also have a role in public goods or semi-public goods, such as open access goods, because you could argue as a libertarian that there's no way that this will be provided through free consent, and if we all agree that it is right and proper for the government to build roads or things like that, then that is allowed, that is something that a government is allowed to do. But by and large, these libertarians have a view of government that is extremely limited. It's essentially a night watch state.